Suzanne's Paparazzi Jewelry, 24/7 shopping available. 160920 is the code. Show her some love, like she showed us. K&A Custom Crafts on Facebook.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Coast to Coast Entertainment Network. I am Ace, and of course, tonight I am joined by none other than the man that we call Big B. How you doing tonight, Big B?
Hey, I'm doing great. A heck of a sports week. I'm ready to talk whatever we want to talk about. Tonight's wrestling. Let's talk about it.
All right, of course. And of course, let's welcome in Mr. William Hudson from TRC. That's right. William Hudson is now one of our co-anchors that are going to be on the show. He's one of our co-hosts. And so, William, welcome in.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Guys, we got a lot to talk about. This has been a heck of a week in professional wrestling. And, man, I can tell you from AEW to Impact, Ring of Honor, what a week. There's a lot of great stuff. So, we're going to try to bring you something different on Tuesday nights, Tuesday Night Mania. So definitely looking forward to it. And thank you for having me.
Oh, absolutely. I've been actually excited about this all week to come out and give this a shot and see how this is going to turn out. I was like, yes, I'm super excited about this. I'm stoked. So with that, how about we go ahead and kick this off the right way, since this is our first episode of Tuesday Night Mania. So we're going to go ahead. We're going to jump right into a little bit of AEW. So Will, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start out with you. So generally, that we've always, whenever we did it on Between the Ropes, we always sat there and we broke down, each match individually. But Will, I'm going to go ahead and we're going to start out with you with Dynamite from Wednesday, and just kind of tell me what was your thoughts and some of the things that you saw on Dynamite, maybe something that you can see coming up in the future happening.
Well, I think one of the biggest things is you got Suzuki coming in from Japan. So you're opening those doors for the New Japan, which AEW is absolutely fabulous with working with these other organizations. And that is the future of professional wrestling now. A global dominant company like WWE is no longer what fans are looking for. Fans are looking for the territory days to come back. And that's exactly what's happening with AEW. They've gone back. And in wrestling, they have a huge tendency of history repeating itself. And that's exactly what they're doing. They're going and they're getting these different people from these different organizations. And people are willing to let them use their talent to get everybody's name over, and everybody gets a seat at the table that way. And WWE is really missing the boat. So by saying that, we can talk about the individual matches and give some breakdowns and all that stuff. Malachi Black, Aleister Black, or what was his name? Not Aleister. Malachi Black coming in to AEW was huge, a huge loss for WWE. But he comes over to AEW and he's a humongous star. Dustin Rhodes, who they figured needed to retire in WWE, has a huge match with Malachi Black. And that's a main event that you could have put on just about any pay-per-view. That is a huge, huge talented match. You're talking about Dustin Rhodes, who's multiple-time Intercontinental Champion, family lineage, multiple-time U.S. champion, been in every organization there is. And Malachi Black, young, up-and-coming guy, who can really, truly carry on a main event. And to me, his style reminds me a lot of a young Rob Van Dam. And Rob Van Dam was somebody who basically carried a small company and made it, to this day, something that people still really wish was back, which was ECW. So I definitely think AEW is doing the right thing, and they're bringing back the territory feeling days. And it's a whole new audience, because the audience of today's wrestling doesn't really know and understand the territory days unless they've been around for a long time, like some of us.
Yeah, and I get completely where you're going with that. I think that the biggest thing right now is that I feel like right now a lot of people are trying to kind of make it a competition, between AEW and WWE. But I've come out multiple times and said, if you're a real wrestling fan, why not just enjoy the variety that we have going right now? Enjoy what you have going on at WWE, enjoy the AEW, enjoy Impact, because each company has their own little thing going on. Go ahead.
Can we quote something that was said? Can we quote something that was said this past week from somebody who has been a world champion and a dominant wrestler for the past 25 plus years? Mick Foley said that if he was having to decide today which company to go to, that he wasn't sure that he would trust the creative of WWE to have his career in their hands. When somebody like that comes out and says that to me, and you guys can argue this and we can debate it, but that to me is the same as somebody saying the Undertaker in 1991 having to decide whether to stay in WCW or go to WWF. That is a big statement from a big time known professional wrestler. And when you have somebody like that calling you out, it's time to really look at your product. And the way WWE could really continue to be the global power they are, they need to finally look at the future and say, we've got to do some things territorial, and it's time for us to stop our thought process of WWE is the only wrestling product out there, because that's their thought process, and make some decisions like AEW is doing. AEW is going to wipe the floor with them financially. They're going to wipe the floor with them ratings-wise as long as this continues.
So getting into kind of what you were saying right there about a little bit of change in WWE. So before we kind of go on to more AEW, how about, the change-wise that we were talking about in that aspect of the cash-in that we had on Monday night, because that's kind of been a huge talk about Big E actually cashing in his Money in the Bank and actually winning the belt from Lashley. Now, there's kind of been a lot of back and forth on that one too, but WWE had to do something to respond to AEW and kind of bring the viewership back on that side. But Will, your overall thoughts of this cash-in, like we previously talked about a little bit before we came on, and you thought it was, the right time for it. And, what else do you need to say about it?
Absolutely. So you have a lot of different things going on here. And I have to be very careful how I choose my words. So as an African-American champion, there hasn't been a lot in the history of the company. A long time. What's up, Joe? For a long,
What's up, guys?
time, it was frowned upon by Vince McMahon Jr. because Vince McMahon Sr. told him way back in the day that, you can't use an African-American. They won't draw enough to fund your building, to fund your project. So then you fast forward all these years later, and you have where they put the World Heavyweight title, which they felt, came from WCW. It wasn't really the WWE Championship, and Booker T and some other guys that held that title. And then you had Kofi, who really was the first true African-American, he's from Jamaica or the islands, but true African-American champion. So once they open that door, then you have Bobby Lashley, tremendous champions, tremendous draws. They're drawing money in. And now you put the belt on somebody like Big E, who has the future, who has that creative behind him. You can different things this guy, and he can truly become the face of Raw, where you really don't have a face of Raw. Seth Rollins has been around for a while. You've used him multiple times. He's not really the face of the brand. Goldberg comes and goes a couple times a year. He's not the face of anything. Lashley is a tremendous competitor who you can use and feels and make it seem like a big match event. But at the end of the day, Lashley's much older, and Lashley's really been through the ringer in his career. So he's probably not going to be a long-term fit. There's so many different feuds you can get out of this, because you're going to have a follow-up with Lashley, of course. You're going to have, what I believe will be the ultimate split of the New Day, which you'll have, some feuding with Kofi. You'll probably have Big E squash Xavier. There'll be some different things there, and you'll be able to really draw all the way up until Mania and then beyond, ultimately move. So it's the right move at the right time.
All right, so welcome in, Joe. And before we get to your thoughts on this, Joe, we're going to get to a few comments in the comment section. So we want to welcome in Ben. He's saying, "What's up, guys? You all are pinned to the announcements in TRC. So thank you very much. It's a pleasure to have you here." And then Joanne is saying, "I'm excited for your big premiere. Congratulations, guys." Absolutely. So thank you. We hope you guys are going to enjoy the show and welcome in. Vicky is also here. She's saying, "What's up, Willie H and everyone at C2C?" She actually tried to get April here. I don't see April yet, but that's okay. Tim Fielder said, "Didn't Booker T agree with Foley?" So, Will, do you remember that? I thought Booker T said something a little bit different, but maybe that could be accurate.
Yes.
He did. Okay.
Yeah, he agreed with them.
It was along the exact same lines.
Because I know originally, if you remember when CM Punk first came back to AEW, Booker T came out and made a statement about the promo that CM Punk cut, and he basically said it was just everything about the WWE. It dealt nothing with AEW, so Booker T thought that was kind of a huge problem. But anyway, so that was good to bring up. So thank you for that, Tim. But Joe, right now we're talking some AEW. We're talking about some things that kind of really stood out on Dynamite on Wednesday, some things you might see coming. What did you really like about it? So I'm going to go ahead and throw this over to you. Give me some comments about Dynamite on Wednesday.
About this past Wednesday's Dynamite?
Yeah.
I thought this past Wednesday was pretty good. I thought it could have been a little bit better in the sense of we have a lot of feuds going into All Out there. You still don't know the Gun Club. How do they fit into we're taking out Paul White or going into the pay-per-view? They kind of left them out. And it's interesting to see how the Dark Order feud is going to go. Are we going to see them break off into two different groups? Are we going to see what the rumor is of Bray coming in and leading one of these groups? The big news is, or the rumor is, that when they go to Rochester, that's where he's going to be at. So is this where we're going to see Dark Order split up?
Yeah, and I'm definitely right there with you. But the other rumor that I heard, though, besides just, Bray Wyatt ending up in AEW, one of the rumors that I heard was that you could potentially see, Braun Strowman and Bray Wyatt both end up in an Impact. And then eventually somewhere along the lines, you see Eric Rowan actually go back in there on Impact too, and kind of reform the Wyatt family a little bit on Impact. So Big B, I'm going to turn to you on this. What is your thoughts on that? Do you think that Bray Wyatt is actually going to AEW, or do you actually think he could end up in Impact with Braun Strowman and Rowan?
No, I think the rumors are being more towards him going to AEW to lead the Wyatt, or to lead Dark Order. It was documented that he took Harper's death really hard. So that's why he stepped away. Contract expired. So I think, Joe, you said it right. Rochester, New York is where Harper was from, and they're going to be there. And I think that's when we're going to see Wyatt show up and either try to bring these two groups together, or he's going to take over one of them. So we'll wait and see. But I put my money on Wyatt in AEW. Strowman and Rowan, I could both see ending up in Impact.
So Christy Wilson is saying that she thinks Bray Wyatt will actually end up in Impact. I guess that's going to definitely be a wait and see. Impact is kind of one of those brands that's definitely going to have to build up, because they don't really have a lot of star power right now. You see a lot of AEW guys basically going to wrestle on the Impact side. But the one question that, Will, I was going to start out with you that I wanted to ask on the AEW side was, as we saw, Bryan Danielson, who was known as Daniel Bryan before, you see him actually going after Kenny Omega for the AEW championship. Do you think that it is too soon for Bryan Danielson to come in and immediately get a title shot? Or do you think do you think he should have to come in and kind of earn it?
Well, so I actually had this exact conversation with Joe in a Target parking lot like 2 weeks ago. I think the whole idea is you got another main event worker. You can bring him in and you can have him take the belt. You can have him run with the belt for a little while. You're going to sell some shirts. You're going to sell some merchandise. You're going to build some revenue up because right now you spent a ton of money. You build up these big contracts, you spend a ton of money. You got to fill some arenas and you got to go bigger, you know. Filling 5,000-6,000 stem arenas, you know, that doesn't work for very long. They're going to want to put on the big show in some big buildings. And I think that's what does it. And then you're going to have Daniel Bryan start to work with a lot of these younger guys. You're going to ultimately see Darby. You're going to see Jungle Boy. You're going to see Luchasaurus. You're going to see younger guys, MJ, out of these younger guys. You're going to see them going after this belt. And, you know, you put together a Daniel Bryan and MJF, that's a main event anywhere in the world. And Daniel Bryan and Dean Ambrose, that main event anywhere in the world. That's a WrestleMania main event. So you're definitely going to put the belt on Bryan, 100%. You know, it's surprising that, you know, again, history repeats itself. And if you remember back in 1994, July of 94, Hogan goes into WCW. His first match is there at the Bash at the Beach in 94. Hogan takes the belt off Flair. Flair has been the name and the face of WCW forever. And Hogan comes in, takes it, runs with it, has tons of feuds with everybody, and draws a ton of money, more money than they've ever drawn in the company. So, and that's exactly what you're going to have happen with Bryan. Ultimately, it builds up to and Punk. You know, that's going to happen too. And then you're going to have the same thing with Punk where, you know, he's going to work with a lot of younger talent, and they're going to build these guys. And by doing that, you're going to build these younger stars. Now, as far as Bray Wyatt, there's no reason that Wyatt can't sign with Impact because Impact stars are constantly used in AEW. Wyatt could easily be there with his friends and be there with Adam Shear and have a great time and still get paid an AEW paycheck and an Impact paycheck. There's no reason he can't do both. But ultimately, I think you see Wyatt form an organization in AEW, and I think he goes to AEW and not Impact.
All right, so Joe, any follow up on that? Do you think it's too soon for Bryan Danielson to get a title shot, or do you agree with Will?
Yes and no. I know they're bringing in a lot more of the WWE guys, as we've been seeing. So what happens to these AEW stars that's already been established, like a Brian Cage? We've seen his wife go out on Twitter and just rip AEW apart because now we went from seeing Brian Cage. He's getting pushed down the ladder rink right now, you know, as these guys are coming in. So what's going to happen to the ones that's been there and established themselves a little bit? You know, you can't forget about those guys. You can't continue to keep putting them on Dark or Evolution, things like that. They're going to have to be on television because at some point in time, Bryan Danielson is going to want to be there all the time. And even like CM Punk, he said he didn't want to be there all the time, but we're now seeing he's on the TV show every single week now. Eventually, that pop's going to go away because everybody's going to get tired of seeing Punk. I mean, he's been gone 7 years, so everybody's excited to see him, but he's like a Brock Lesnar in a way. He's got to go away a little bit and then come back and get that pop again. So, Brian, that's a new thing. Yeah, they're going to push the Kenny match. They're going to get big ratings on it. Should Kenny lose it to him? Yeah, in a way, because it will establish some new matches along the way. But again, you got to think about the guys that's been there. You know, eventually those guys' contracts are going to come up because we're going to be coming into that third year here. So what do you do then?
Yeah, and I'm right there with you too. When AEW started signing all these people, this is the problem that I saw happening. Was people were talking about how WWE had all this talent and they weren't going to use it. Well, what's going to happen with AEW? It's going to be the same thing. They're going to have all this talent, and then the guys who originally with AEW are going to start getting pushed down. Now, I'm not saying that AEW is going to be bad. I'm not saying that, because I think that the talent they have, I think that they have a good thing going. I do. They're just going to have to try and figure out how to use everybody, utilize them in the best way that they can, instead of using all the AEW guys who were there and kind of put them on the back burner for all these released WWE stars that are coming in. I just don't know if it was like the perfect time for Bryan Danielson to come in and get a title shot. I think that somebody that's been there for a little bit longer should get one. But hey, I'm excited to see how this turns out anyway. But let's jump to a few comments here. So Larry Walker hopped on and he said, "What's up, everyone? TRC for life." So there you go, Will. You have somebody who's repping TRC right there. Christy Wilson saying, Omega versus Danielson is a feud I feel that I can get behind. And I think that's like the biggest thing, is that people are looking forward to a Danielson versus Omega feud. I think that could actually be huge. That could be a very, very good match. Big B, what's your thoughts on that one?
No, I don't even think they have to have a title match. I think that match by itself would just be phenomenal. I don't think Danielson should get a title shot right away. I think Larry said it, that Hangman Page should get a title run first, or should be the champ. And let's see how it goes. I mean, you got the young guys, you brought them in, and that was one thing AEW said, is that they're going to use their younger talent. They're going to produce them, promote them, and now they're bringing in the names that we all know and using them more. So, I like what Will said, that, give it to Brian, let him run it with it for a little bit, build up these guys. But I kind of like to see them put it on Page, put it on Jungle Boy, and let them see if they can actually be the face. And then if not, then you can fall back and give it to a CM Punk, a Bryan Danielson, or back to Omega or something. So they got a lot to work with. They got a lot of guys. Will kind of touched on it. It's kind of like the old WCW.
So keep in mind, there is no.
Keep in mind what? You kind of cut out there.
Yeah, you cut out for a
Keep
second.
in mind, there's no Peacock. Their WWE does everything on pay-per-view buys.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
No, I get that too, and let's not forget too that Scott Wiseman is also talking about how Ruby Riott, when she got released from WWE, she came to AEW. She actually won the Casino Battle Royal to end up getting a title shot against Britt Baker too. And so Ruby Soho now, it was her first match. She wins it, so she gets a title shot. So now you're starting to see it a little bit more kind of happening a little bit more and more here, because Christian was signed. He came in pretty quickly. He got a title shot. Now Bryan Danielson is doing it.
Impact title shot.
Yeah, but still, it is still a title shot. But a few more comments that we have here is that Scott Wiseman is saying, it's like when you buy Madden and play it for a week, then WWE and NBA games come out. So he's referring that to Madden. And then Jemias is also saying the TRC cult of personality is here. So thank you for that, Jemias. But Will, I'm going to go back to you before we go into Impact quick. What else did you have to say about AEW? Are there?
I don't know if he's frozen or.
I think he might have froze for a second. All right, Joe. So while we're waiting for Will, I will jump to you. Any final thoughts on AEW?
No, I look forward to it this week to see what happens. I bounce around. I watch all the wrestling organizations out there. So it's another one of those weeks. I'll DVR it because I won't be in town to watch it. But as soon as I get home, I'll check it out.
All right. Will, are you back?
Yeah.
All right. He's back. So yeah, we were just saying any final thoughts for AEW before we jump to Impact.
I'm here.
Okay.
Final thoughts are it's all about stories and it's all about history repeating itself, and doing that generates funds, generates money. It allows this company who came along as a small territorial company to end up being a big global dominant company by doing it this way. So this is the way it should be done, and they're going to end up making a lot of money by doing it this way.
All right, so we do have an interesting comment here from Christy Wilson and actually Jemias too. They're actually talking about Orange Cassidy, and Christy Wilson was talking about how Orange Cassidy should kind of be a champion. So I'm an Orange Cassidy fan, but I don't know if I can see him as an AEW champion. Big B, what do you think?
Title maybe
a TV title? Yeah.
Yeah.
Will, how about you? Do you see Orange Cassidy as a AEW champion, like a world champion?
Not right now. Not right now.
Not right now.
For him to be AEW champion.
All right, Joe, how about you? Do you see Orange Cassidy being a AEW world champion?
Not at the moment, no. I agree. I think you put him on the TNT Championship title and give him a run with that for a little bit and get him ready for that. But at this moment, no. And nothing against him. He's great talent. I just don't think that way AEW is going right now, he's in that level area at this moment.
Or you give him that makeshift title that Taz brought in that Sparks is holding now. I mean,
oh yeah, the little FTW.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know.
So,
I don't know.
Yeah, we can put a title on him, but I don't. And I love him. I think the character is awesome. But yeah,
he could be one of those guys that you don't never need a title on either.
No, he doesn't.
Yeah, he's kind of like a Miz type. But anyway, so how about we jump over to Impact? I know there's not really a whole lot to talk about on the Impact side, but we saw that Sami Callihan, last week he came back, and so that's kind of big for Impact. We have had those rumors swirling around that people are going to be debuting at Impact, that they're going to be getting some big time names. I'm waiting to see if they can actually go out and land some big time names. But Joe, I'm going to start with you on this one. Do you think that Impact is going to be able to sign any big time names? And what was your thoughts on Impact from this last week?
Well, there's a lot of names running around. One of them is Braun. He's kind of mentioned in his Twitter about it, going by the name of Titan. So he could be one. And I think he would do good there because it gives him a couple big men to work with, and there's not a lot of major competition, so he's got the opportunity to shine there more. I think a Buddy Murphy would do good there. Great talent, just really was not used right. They say creative doesn't have anything for you, but those are the guys that write stories for you. So I never believed that whole thing. But I think he's a great talent. I think he'd do good.
Mm-hmm.
All
right, we kind of lost you there for a second.
Think of right off my head.
That's okay.
The women part of it, I don't think.
No, that's fine. Good.
You there?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. No, you guys are good.
Yeah. No, I was just gonna ask. I was gonna ask you and say, do you like that Ace Austin now is going to be going against Christian Cage for the Impact World Championship? And
it's another one. It's outside the box type thing.
Mm-hmm.
With him, I think he's a good talent. Obviously, I don't think he's going to beat Christian there. I don't even know who they're really setting it up for Christian to lose that title at this moment. I could see maybe a Sammy Callahan down at the road taking the title. I would like to see Sammy get another run with it.
Yeah, it was definitely good to see him back. I was excited when he came back. But William Hudson, I'm gonna go to you on this one. What do you think of the whole Ace Austin and Christian Cage angle at this point? I think we might have lost him.
Yeah, we got bad service going on. We got some Florida storms down here that torrential.
Okay, that makes sense. That makes sense. Okay, so you're kind of cutting in and out. So we'll get to Will as soon as we can. But Big B, what do you think? Do you like the Ace Austin versus Christian Cage angle? Because right now, because he just won it, so obviously you're not going to want to put him against somebody automatically to where he can lose the title that quick. I think he's going to hold it for a little while. And I think that maybe putting him against Ace Austin right now is the perfect first feud to kind of start out with the Impact Championship.
Yeah, I could see this being a good feud. I mean, we've talked about it before. Cage, Christian, put on good matches. The highlights I've seen of Ace Austin, seems like he's another guy that could match up really good. They could put it on him. They could, put it on Cage. They could, do, if Cage wins, they do a rematch, something like that. But, Impact's hit or miss for me. I mean, they bring in some guys. I think they brought in Big Cass.
Mm-hmm.
They brought in some old WWE guys, with Strowman coming in. I mean, Impact's probably a good place for Strowman. There's some big guys that, I think Will said it, that he can match up against Moose and Kaz and, stuff like that. So it'll be interesting. I mean, Impact really needed that partnership with AEW, I think, to keep them afloat. So hopefully they can start getting their own name going and they can start putting on better matches. I mean, they're putting on good matches now, but put on some big time matches, I think, would help them out.
All right, so Will, are you back?
Yeah.
He's shaking his head. Yeah. All right, you're back. Yeah, so I was just saying, what was your thoughts on this angle between Ace Austin and Christian Cage?
I like it. I think it's going to be a really good exhibition. No, I don't think there'll be a title change, but I'm a whole lot more excited for the 10-man tag with the teams. You got Christian Cage leading a team. You got Austin leading the team. I think that's going to be a whole lot better. That's this Thursday at 8. That's going to be really good. And then I think the underlying things there are Christian is there to build new talent with these younger guys. And that's exactly what he needs to do. No, I don't think he'll lose the title. The big stories in Impact that I think are, young guys like W. Morrissey or Big Cass, whatever you want to call him. He's a huge deal. He's a huge deal and could have been a big deal in WWE if he didn't have backstage. Moose there too. Moose is a huge deal. The biggest thing Impact has, in my opinion, is their women's division. And I know that's a little off the topic, but Mickie James leading that women's division is absolutely incredible. It's powerful. Anytime you have somebody who has been in the ring, done the things that she's done, been all over the world, all these different companies, she's a driving force, and she's going to build some future super divas, if you will, out of that. And those are going to end up being your future WWE, AEW. And that's really the big story in Impact. You've got Myers there, you got Ryder there. I think those guys are there because they had to have a job. I don't see them doing a whole lot, going forward. They're just kind of there. You got a lot of young guys, and that's why Christian's there. But again, you got Adam Shearer coming in. He's going to dominate the division. But I think a lot of that, too, is so he can be on loan to AEW, and he'll be a big deal in both companies. But when you put Adam Shearer in the ring against Big Cass, Adam Shearer isn't that big anymore. So Big Cass is a big deal, and that's a future world champion right there somewhere. That's somebody's world champion. That's a remake of a Psycho Sid or a Diesel or one of those big guys like that. Plus, you got some other major stars there. Chelsea Green is a major star in the women's division, and I think she got a raw deal over in NXT and WWE, but I think she's a big deal there. There's a couple good things going on in that company, but I think if I was to sum it all up, that's up all of Impact real fast.
You're definitely right there. But I think the one thing that you're right about with Impact is because Christian's there and his veteran presence and status in the locker room, I think that could help attract a lot of talent towards Impact and actually help him create a great environment and kind of help the younger talent. And so that is a big part of Christian being there, which I thought was great because if you remember, he was always big when he was in TNA. A multi-time TNA champ, was probably the biggest star at the time when he was in TNA. I mean, yeah, you had guys like Kurt Angle there and Bully Ray. I think AJ Styles was there for a little while when Christian was there, but you did have some bigger names there. But Christian was always that big star, so he kind of has experience with Impact, so he can definitely come in and help them. But Joe, before we move on to our next topic, I'm going to ask you, do you have any final thoughts on the Impact side?
Not too much. I've been watching Impact since day one, back in TNA days. So I hope they get better. I find myself, again, like Big says, I'm hit or miss with them. I fast forward through a lot of stuff. It's just nothing catching my eye. And I don't know if it's just because they're in Nashville and there's not really a whole big crowd there or anything like that. But I'm just looking for something with them to really catch my eye again with them. And I'm hoping that they'll get out of the Nashville studios here soon and get back on the road a little bit. Maybe that's what they need. Because I like the Good Brothers. I think they're good. I just think right now they're just there, just not necessarily collecting the paycheck. There's nothing really going on for them right now. Some of the storylines to me is a little stale, but that's just me. I've been watching wrestling forever, so there's not too much new that gets me going at this moment. But I'm just hoping, and I don't wish no ill will upon them. But I think that they need a new setting, new scenery. Maybe like the NXT tonight, I caught a little bit of that on my drive. Arena looked really good, even though it was 2 weeks ago, it was the same looking arena. There's new lights in there, and I was impressed with that. So, but I think that's what Impact needs, is to get back on the road and start bringing in the crowd.
Well, I'll definitely say the Good Brothers being the tag team, the tag champs for Impact, it is good. But now remember though, Carl Anderson was kind of under fire a little bit about a comment that he made, and so I think people were really upset about that, and it definitely was not a good look. I'll tell you that for the comments he made, it definitely was not a good look. I was actually angry at the guy for it too. I understand that people make mistakes, and he did come out and apologize for it, which apologizing is the first step, but watch the comments that you're making, because that comment definitely wasn't necessary at that time. And that could have been a lot worse for him, but I'm glad that he didn't end up getting fired or suspended or whatever, because it's just comments that he shouldn't have made.
Yeah, no, I agree. But Joe said he's been watching since day one. I kind of been in and out. I think Impact's biggest thing when they started was a 6-sided ring, and if they go back to that, I think they put them ahead of the game a little bit. But that's the little niche they have, and each promotion always has a niche somewhere, and Impact losing that for whatever reason, people couldn't do it or whatever. I think it was a big blow to them, because I think if they kept that 6-sided ring, they'd be up there right now.
Yeah, they were definitely trying to do something that other that other companies were not doing, and that was it for him, and it actually worked. So I actually liked it. So I do wish that they would go back to it. But that brings us to our next topic, which is actually Will's topic. It's his topic. This is Will's Tuesday night throwback. So Will, go ahead and take this away. What is your Tuesday night throwback for us today?
So one thing I definitely want to, I just want to kind of throw one last thing out there on the Impact. I think Impact is AEW's NXT, is what I think it is.
Oh,
I think Impact is AEW's NXT.
Definitely
We
I
did.
wanted to make sure that I made that point.
So Will,
my
before
throwback is to
good. I was going to say, before you jumped into that throwback quick, we had a question. It was from Scott Wiseman. He said, who's winning prime time? Is it WCW Nitro or is it Impact Wrestling? What do you think, Will?
I'm not sure how to answer that question.
Okay. All right. Joe, what do you think? You're on mute. By the way.
Shoot, my
There you
bad.
go.
What's he trying to ask? If who's winning prime time, Nitro or Impact?
Yeah, so-
is
I think Scott had one too many
Impact's
beers.
still on the air right now. Nitro's obsolete.
Yeah,
and
but-
it's still winning prime time and hasn't been around for a while.
Okay, but he's saying early Impact to now. So you
Ooh,
look at the WCW.
I love
the
early Impact. I love the early Impact. I wasn't a big fan of the Six Sides of Steel or Six Sides ring, but listening to Jeff Jarrett's podcast was interesting because he said without that six side ring, there would have been no Impact or TNA because everybody already had a square ring. That's how they got the merchandise out that they got out, was because they were different with that. Now, a lot of wrestlers didn't like that ring because it was so hard. But I love that early Impact. The beginning of it, the Hogan era, I love because those guys there, the AJs, the Christopher Daniels. A lot of that credit has to go to Dixie Carter because she kept those people employed when nobody else wanted them at the time. So I will always love the beginning TNA Impact. This one here is not so much. I like those guys that are on there, but I wish we would see more of that stuff that helped create Impact to what it was or is.
All right. So now we'll go back to Will. I'm sorry, Will. We just had to answer that question quick. So now it is officially your topic. So go ahead and take it away. Your throwback.
So throwback for tonight, we're going to go back 29 and a half years is what we're going to do, back to February of 1992 to the old WWF magazine from February of 92. I mean, this is huge. So inside of this fits right in with what we're talking about, and I'll tell you why. So 29 and a half years ago, you had Survivor Series 1991 results. So they used to do in these magazines like a Battle of the Titans section, or when there was a pay-per-view,
Gotcha.
they would do the results section.
Okay.
So when they would do that, let me see if I can maybe get this on camera better. And this kind of plays right in. So if you listen to the matches that I'm going to tell you, the first match on a WWF pay-per-view card was Ric Flair, the $1 Million Man, the Mountie, and the Warlord versus Roddy Piper, Bret Hart, Virgil, and the Bulldog. So you had the battle of the territories right there in that match. You had Flair come over to WWF from WCW. So tremendous match up there. Ended up being Flair's team was the winner. Second match of the night, or another match, Berserker and Colonel Mustafa versus El Matador, Texas Tornado, Hacksaw Duggan, and Sergeant Slaughter. So think about that. Those guys right there came from all kinds of different territories in the WWE, most notably the Texas Tornado from WCCW, and from Texas. So, big deal there. Huge match there. You had the Beverly Brothers and the Nasty Brothers Nasty Boys versus the Rockers and the Bushwhackers. One of the notable matches, you had the Boss Man and Legion of Doom, which was supposed to be also Macho Man on that team. And, of course, he couldn't be there. Or it was supposed to be Sid, I think it was, and he wasn't there. Sid had gone back, left WWF and gone back to WCW. So more territory stuff. And then you had in the main event or the WWF Championship match, The Undertaker, who just 1 year earlier had come over from WCW. So again, talking about territory days, one of the underused stars and performers in WCW is now a main star in WWF 1 year later, getting ready to take the world title off Hulk Hogan at the time. And that's something you just didn't do at that time. So huge throwback to Survivor Series 91. Again, this is all inside of the February 1992 WWF copy of the magazine. Of course, this one's in great condition. This is from my personal collection, but 29 and a half years old, talking about some of those throwback things. Then you fast forward to today and you look at, things they're doing. It's all about the territories. It's all about bringing people in and keeping it exciting and keeping it fresh. And, that's why I felt like it was very relevant to today's conversation. So throwback.
All right. So thank you very much for that, Will. You were getting a lot of feedback on that. Actually, a lot of people were actually commenting on that, talking about how they like the old Survivor Series days. And they even mentioned how they even like the old, the old King of the Ring, which they're talking about bringing back now. So I'm glad you brought that up, because that was actually a huge hit on that one, which actually kind of brings us into our next topic when you look at it, which is you kind of look at the Attitude Era and the WWE and you think about it. And so who was some of your favorite wrestlers from the Attitude Era? And so Big B, I'll start with you. Who was some of your favorite guys from the Attitude Era?
Oh man, you had, Triple H, Austin, Rock, Taker was there, Kane. I mean, that's probably the top notch guys right there. I mean, the Attitude Era, they pushed the limit on so much on TV that, if they brought it back today, I think would score big ratings again. But, we're in a PG rated era, so they couldn't do none of that. So, I mean, even Vince made himself part of it and got in a few feuds with Austin and DX and, all that stuff. So, whoever we list, I think is going to be a great list. But that was my list. But I enjoyed that Attitude Era, the Monday Night Wars, everything. That to me was wrestling, and we're kind of get back into that. Like Will stated a few times, wrestling repeats itself, and I think we're getting into that repeating right now.
So, but do you have an overall favorite from the Attitude Era?
Oh no, I don't. I mean, there's so much. I mean, if I really had to pick one, I think Austin. I think him, because we all want to go after our boss once in a while. So I think that was the niche of that. But outside of that, I mean, no, I can't really pick one.
All right, Joe, I'll go to you on this one. When you think about the Attitude Era, who do you really think of? Do you really have a favorite from the Attitude Era? Okay, he's kind of going in and out here, so I'll go back to him. Will, how about you? Do you have an overall favorite from the Attitude Era?
Yes, I do. And my overall favorite from the Attitude Era is definitely Kane. And I'll tell you why. So, everybody says, Stone Cold Steve Austin. And, of course, he was the biggest thing. He led the charge. And then you had The Rock, who became, built in that era as well, right behind him, because you had to have somebody be the arch enemy for Austin ultimately, because McMahon feud was going to end at some point. But Kane, you had Kane come out October of 97. The guy was a tremendous monster. He was believable. You believed he was probably the biggest, baddest thing in WWF at the time. You believed that if anybody could actually stop The Undertaker, it was Kane. And ultimately, he became so big with the fans and became so big in wrestling that you let him take the belt, even though it was only for one night. You let him take the belt off your big moneymaker. Austin drew more money during that time period than any other wrestler in the history of wrestling. And, you let Kane take that belt off of him and go to Monday Night Raw as the world champion. That's huge. And then, of course, as you move on with the feuds, you had to go on, you add The Undertaker in it, you had to add Mankind in it, and of course, the night that Kane wins the WWF title, which should be the biggest night of his career, is overshadowed by Mick Foley taking the fall off the cage. So, of course, that's not done intentionally. That was an accident that it became such a big deal. But, the guy overall, every match he was in, everything he was in, he was totally believable. He was a tremendous athlete. And if you remember, just a year earlier, so that's 97, October 97, he comes out. A year earlier, the guy's pretending to be, he's the fake Diesel. And everybody can't stand him and boos him off the stage. And you can't even fathom what it's like to have a fake Kevin Nash. And ultimately, in the end, in my opinion, Kane becomes a bigger superstar in wrestling than Kevin Nash was.
Yeah, and so, Will, I'm so glad you said Kane, because I've said so many times about how my favorite wrestler of all time is probably Kane. I've always been such a huge fan of Kane, especially back then. I know as time went on, people kind of stopped liking him so much because, he became the corporate Kane. He took the mask off and everything else. But I still think he was phenomenal no matter what. I loved his character. And so when I think about Attitude Era, I always thought about Kane. But here's been a big question, though, that people have asked. People have always said, would Kane have been as good as he was if he did not have The Undertaker? So with Will, you being a big fan of Kane just like me, do you agree that Kane would have had just as good of a career if he was not with The Undertaker?
No.
Oh.
No.
Okay.
He wouldn't. He needed The Undertaker. He needed that role and the storyline. And then ultimately, the Brothers of Destruction became something even more and a continued draw. So, no, he wouldn't have been without The Undertaker. No way.
All right. So, Joe, now we're going to come over to you. So when you think about the Attitude Era, who's probably your favorite from the Attitude Era?
So,
Yep. Sorry, guys.
he was a monster.
Sorry, guys. We're having some technical difficulties here.
Triple H was one of my favorite. I think he was absolutely an awesome heel. Everybody hated the fact that he was the champion for so long, but he helped create superstars. Hollywood Hogan, another one. Even though he was WCW, I loved when he changed like that. That changed wrestling. And without those things, we probably wouldn't be talking about wrestling as much as we are right now. Because if it wasn't for NWO and WCW, there wouldn't have been no Attitude Era.
Yeah, now here's a common question though. Okay, so people talk about NWO, people talk about DX. Which one would you prefer? Did you like NWO better, or did you like DX better?
Oh, DX, man! Those guys got to show all the girls' boobies on TV when you're 17 years old. You love it, I love the NWO, but as teenage hormones, man, you love DX just for that fact that they do that.
All right, Will, how about you? Would you rather go with DX or would you rather go with the NWO?
NWO all day long. It was such a believable storyline. There was so much realism about it. I think we talked about this at one point where Nash launches Rey Mysterio into the side of the trailer like a lawn dart. I mean, that was incredible, and it was so believable. Hulk coming out on Monday Nitro and talking about WCW wants a war. It was so believable that WWF had really invaded WCW, and it really took a little while to sink in that these guys are actually working for WCW and working for WWF. So definitely NWO. It was so believable.
Yeah, for me, it was extremely hard because I liked them both. I loved the NWO gimmick. I love DX. It was all fantastic. So for me, it's completely hard to choose. But Big B, I'm going to ask you, which way would you go? Would you go NWO or would you go DX?
Man, it is. I mean, Joe makes a argument for DX, but if it wasn't for Hogan in the turn, probably the most famous heel turn ever in the NWO, I would have to go. I have to go with the original NWO storyline. Not probably up until the Giant, as they called him, became NWO. After that, they got too big. Then I would pick DX. But if you tell me from start to start, then I gotta go NWO with Hall, Nash, Hogan. Like Will said, when they had the threw stereo into the side of the trailer, if I remember right, I think it was so believable that people started calling the cops, and I think the cops started showing up at that one, because there was a big fight outside and stuff like that. So, like Will said, that NWO storyline was believable.
Yeah, there's a housing complex on the other side of Disney there. Mm-hmm. And when they brought all the cops back there and all the ruckus was going on, they called because there was so much chaos going on back there. Yeah. So that's why Eric Bischoff said they could never go back to Disney at the time.
That's kind of funny.
But I love the NWO. I honestly do. I love the NWO. I loved Hogan growing up as a child, and when he made the turn like that, NWO. Yeah. Like Scott Hall says, 6-figure checks in the mail every couple months. He loves them.
Yep.
All right, so we have, we've covered some of our favorite ones, such as NWO and DX. But now it actually brings us to our final topic, which is when you think about it, what are some of the worst gimmicks that you've seen? Maybe WCW wise, WWE, AEW, Impact, whatever. What are some horrible gimmicks you've seen? And Will, I'm going to start with you. What are some of the worst ones you've seen?
Well, if you take mine, I'm throwing my computer out the window.
But the two that stand out most to me and always will are Disco Inferno. Inferno, I think, was horrible. And then over in WWF would be Mantar.
That was wasn't that Conan?
He came out with the big mask on his head. He came out looking like a man beast.
Oh, okay, no, that wasn't Conan then.
No. He didn't last very long on TV.
No.
So look him up. Look him up. He was awful. He was worse.
No, I know who you're talking about.
Worse than the Gobbledygooker, worse than the Goon, worse than all those guys.
Worse than the Hunchback? I mean, he was on there too.
Yep. Man,
so I have to know, Will, what was it about the Disco Inferno that you didn't like?
I could never stand the gimmick. I could never stand, at that time, I was like 13, 14, 15 years old, and he's out there dancing and that stuff. And, it was still the character era when he was out there. And I just couldn't believe this guy's going to go out there and dance and then get in the ring with somebody like the Macho Man who seemed larger than life, or Hulk Hogan who seemed larger than life. it just made you think that Hulk Hogan would kill the Disco Inferno in a ring, you know, and then, you know, somebody like Vader was still really a big deal then. And I always wanted to see Vader get in the ring with Disco Inferno, but Vader left for WWF, and Disco was coming up at that point. But if you had put Vader in the ring with Disco Inferno, you would have never seen Disco Inferno again because Vader would have broke him in half. You know, so I just never could stand the gimmick. I didn't like it. It just didn't. It's one of those things where you just don't have a taste for it. But I would have loved to have seen Vader powerbomb Disco Inferno about 7 or 8 times.
So Charles Fielder is actually saying Kevin Nash as the Wizard.
Oh,
Kevin Nash is Oz. Yes.
yeah.
The Wizard. The Wizard. That would definitely be an interesting one. Jemias is saying the Giant Gonzalez. He didn't care for that one too much either. And the Goon. The Goon. So I think a lot of us remember the Goon. That was definitely an interesting gimmick there. That one didn't go very well. But Joe, I'm going to turn this one over to you. What do you think? What was some of your least favorite gimmicks? They're just gimmicks that didn't work.
The Goon was bad, but you know what? We're getting an action figure from him, so that's gonna go up on my shelf. I'll probably have to get that from Will. Gosh, I've been watching wrestling since 1987, so I was 7 years old. So started out watching World Class Championship Wrestling on ESPN right after school, and then it went to Global Wrestling Federation, and AWA was on there. So golly, man, I have seen horrible gimmicks like none other. Bastion Booger was one of those guys that was just horrible, you know, a horrible gimmick. The guy, Mike Shaw, the wrestler, was great. You know, he had a great running up in Canada and those places, but that was one of the bad ones from WWE or WWF at the time. What's another one? Max Moon was Alho Matoya, jockstrap on his face. That was bad. God, those are just some of the WWE ones. WCW had a lot. Yeah, Kevin Nash's Oz was bad. Poor Kevin Nash, Master Blaster. That poor guy got all kinds of horrible gimmicks, but man, he made some money at the end of it, didn't he? Though.
Oh yeah.
Just I remember State Patrol in the beginnings. There's just I don't think we have a lot. Dungeon of Doom was horrible, you know, as a great talent, just horrible characters.
Oh yeah.
So-
Well, I can't wait for that Zodiac character though. I want that figure too. So
Joe, we have a question for you. They're saying, what are your thoughts on Glacier?
I love Mortal Kombat, but that guy was not good for Glacier.
That guy was not good.
Wrong time. Pre Attitude Era, he probably would have been a world champion in that sense. But coming in at that point in time, they spent a lot of money to build that character with all the glitz and glamour and videos, but wrong place, wrong time. Another thing with like Disco, I actually like Disco. Same thing, wrong time for him. And Boogie Nights, Dancing Fool, whatever you want to call it, Alex Wright and all those guys, just wrong place, wrong time for those guys.
All right, so Will, looks like we have a question for you. What's your thoughts on Mortis?
Oh, tremendous character. Definitely, you know, the idea of having that or Glacier definitely could have done a lot more with him. And ultimately, they did do a lot more with him once they took the mask off of him. So, good character storyline, wrong time. Because at that point, by the time they were still trying to build those characters at the end of 95, 96, they were also trying to go in a brand new era where they're showing wrestlers as like real people instead of characters. So In the character days, great character. In that era, 96, 97, 98, they're trying to make everybody into believable wrestlers. It's over with. The character part is over with. And unfortunately, that's a lot of what is a big miss today is you don't have good characters. You have a lot of guys out there that are athletes. You have a lot of guys out there that are muscle bound. You have some guys that are mentally equipped, but you don't have good characters. And that's what you need to put together a good storyline, which draws the fans, which builds the big feeling of, I want to see it. And I talked about this briefly before, but going into SummerSlam this year, what made it so exciting to see was you had big storylines and you had a good feeling of characters. You wanted to see, Cena and Reigns, and you wanted to see Goldberg and Lashley because of the characters. You just don't have that as a whole right now.
All right, so Big B, now it's your turn. And did they take any of them you were going to say?
No, I mean WWE or WWF. Yeah, the tag team, the Ninja Turtles, that lasted a few months.
The Toxic Turtles. The Toxic Turtles.
Yeah. I mean, come on. You had A. Knuckleball Schwartz. Somebody said the Repo Man. Which another one I was kind of like, oh, come on, really? WCW, the one that will stand out with me all the time, even though he only was on one show, was number 7. Dustin Rhodes comes floating down. And and honestly, I thought he cut the meanest promo ever and then just walked off. I thought that was very stupid of them to promote it and then all that. And, but I mean, we talked about it, the Oz and, Bastion Booger and, a couple of the guys from the Dungeon of Doom I didn't really care for. The Berserker, wasn't that Beefcake? I mean, that was kind of whatever. So, but no, 7 I think is top there along with the Toxic Turtles and A. Knuckleball Schwartz.
Well, they had to end the gimmick of 7 because of the simple fact that people saw him as a child abductor because of everything that they were showing. They didn't think that the character was right. They didn't think it was good. Right. So that's why they had to be like, yeah, this gimmick has to go with it. So you only saw it once. It was very, very short. The 2 gimmicks that I really think of, which you took one of mine, Big B, which was the Toxic Turtles. Yeah. You took that one. That one came to mind. We talked about that one a few times. But one of them, the Shockmaster, that was definitely one that his debut was just interesting. It was a horrible debut trying to bust through the wall, and he falls down and his helmet falls off, and the whole debut and gimmick was just weird. And then the Yeti was another one that was I don't know. I thought the Yeti was one that I could not get behind. I was like, man, what kind of horrible gimmick is the Yeti? So the Shockmaster and the Yeti, and I was going to say the Toxic Turtles too, but those were definitely ones that I'm like, man, they were horrible.
And actually, another tag team, I love Animal and stuff, but pairing them up with
do you remember
Heinrich was ridiculous.
Yeah. Go ahead. Who was going to say something, Will?
I think it was Joe.
Ace, do you remember the Halloween Havoc 1995 when Hogan loses the title? Hogan in between the Giant and himself.
Yeah.
And he kind of has his arms up in the air and just kind
of
shakes his body around.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what really threw me off of the Yeti, because that was just crazy. And I believe the Yeti was actually Kevin Nash, was it not? No?
No, I'm just looking it up too because that's who I thought it was. But
no, the Yeti was
Ronald Reese.
Ron Reese, Big Ron Reese.
Yep,
part of the Ravens flock.
But
that I did not know.
But Joe, you were going to say something?
Yeah, I was going to say probably one of the worst ones I've seen too, and it had nothing to do with WWE and or WCW, was TNA in the beginning good friends of mine, the Shane twins. They were Ron and Dick Johnson, the Johnson brothers, that were dressed like giant condoms. If you remember that, it was like the first 3 shows there. Unfortunately, they are one of the best tag teams in the state of Florida. You know, NWA World Tag Team Champions down here, and they get signed there, and they get giant latex masks put on their heads.
Wow.
Then they become the Geminis. Go figure. And
do you remember the Viagra on a pole match?
I remember that, and the Judy Bagwell on the pole or a forklift. Those great storylines.
Yeah, I don't remember that, honestly.
Yeah, Viagra on the pole was one of the last WCW.
In WCW, yeah, late era WCW.
Yeah.
Viagra on a pole. I can't even imagine that.
That was right around the time with Judy Bagwell on the forklift there.
Well, I'm speechless after that. I don't even know what to say to that. That's wow. I never would have. I'm not sure what to say about the dressing up like condoms and then the Viagra on a pole. Like those are the 2 things.
Yeah, it's like episode 3 or 4. Check into it. You'll see them on there. Poor guys.
I will definitely
Blue Chew commercial.
I will definitely check that out. But that's all we have.
You're gonna have to get on YouTube and check some of this out.
Oh yeah, I definitely will. I'm gonna go in there, and after we get done here, I'm gonna go in and check some of this out because I'm really curious on how crazy this stuff was. Very creative writing, I must say. Very, very creative. So
that's where creativity came in.
Oh, absolutely. But that's all we actually have for you tonight. So I'm going to go around the room just one more time and kind of give everybody's final thoughts. So, Joe, I'll start with you. Any final thoughts on anything else tonight?
Well, I got to tell NXT, and I'm impressed that they actually had a wedding that went off without a problem. 2 people actually got married on there for once.
I'm going to actually watch NXT after this, too.
Shoot. So if I did a spoiler alert, hey.
Nope. You didn't spoil it, so you're good. All right. Will, any final thoughts?
Will's frozen.
Is he back? No, he's not back yet. All right, I'll go back to Will. Big B, any final thoughts?
Am I frozen again?
I'm glad we got to talk more wrestling today. I'm going to enjoy the show like Ace. Look for it all weekend long. Couldn't wait for it. Couldn't wait for it to be Tuesday. But AEW's got my interest because it's got some Minnesota vibes to it with JDX on AEW Dark, and it's got Top Flight, another young talented tag team from Minnesota, and Julia Hart, who's with the Varsity Blondes. So, you put Minnesota talent on there, you got my attention. So,
I like it. All right, so let's see if Will's back now. Will, are you back? Do we have you?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yep. Yes, we're good.
All right, so my final thoughts are, great episode, great comments, great conversation. Definitely covered some good stuff. I think, the whole idea of this show is a great idea. It's a lot more of an open platform, and I think people are looking for that, and I think people will enjoy it. And I really think that, comparing things, history repeating itself, doing some of the throwback stuff, the gimmicks, great ideas, great suggestions. So definitely looking forward to next week. Want to take a minute and give a huge shout out to Top Rope Collectibles. Make sure you guys are all checking those guys out, including myself, on Sunday nights at 8 o'clock. And wanted to say thank you to everybody for tuning in, and thank you guys for having me. And Joe, thanks for coming on, and Big B and Ace, great conversation. So thank you.
Thank you. So Will plugged in TRC. So Joe, I don't know if there's anything you do that you need to plug in or what. Is there anything that you need to plug?
No, I don't have anything. I follow TRC. I buy a lot of things for them.
TRC.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you everybody for watching. Thank you, Will, for coming on. Thank you, Joe, and thank you, Big B. It was a great conversation. I'm looking forward to next week. We're going to have some awesome topics for you next week. Stay tuned for that. And then don't forget, Sunday night, we actually have another episode of Between the Ropes. We're going to break down Raw and SmackDown. So everybody have a fantastic night, and we'll see you next Tuesday for another episode of Tuesday Night Mania. Have a good night.